disrupt existing industries. So us as project founders, as engineers in the space, we really would not be able to do this without the greater community like you guys. So thank you for coming here. Today I'm going to talk to you about Origin Protocol, the sharing economy without intermediaries. My name is Matthew Liu. I'm one of the co-founders. So product guy, engineer, have been working on this for the past half a year or so, and really excited to share with you our vision on how we are going to decentralize the sharing economy and make it so that buyers and sellers can connect on a peer-to-peer basis. Let me start with a little bit of history. So about 1995 or so, we saw our first internet marketplaces come online. We had companies like Craigslist as well as eBay. For those of you that were alive at that point, they definitely changed the way that business was done. Craigslist, as an example, allowed buyers and sellers in local communities to come together. They met online, but then they transacted offline. And that's a brand new paradigm. eBay also was a brand new paradigm. It created a new auction-based pricing discovery model that allowed buyers to basically state how much they wanted to pay for services. And so there's been these innovations in marketplaces. She's just trying to make it hard on me. There have been all these innovations in marketplaces the past 20 years or so, but one of the major innovations we've seen in the past 5 to 10 years is in the sharing economy. So these are these two-sided marketplaces where buyers and sellers are able to offer fractional usage of assets and services. So when we're talking about assets, we're talking about home sharing, we're talking about ride sharing. So companies like Airbnb, companies like GetAround, like Zipcar. When we're talking about services, we have companies like Elance. So how do you actually take a person's time and their skills and then share it across a broader community? Related to Elance, you have Fiverr, and obviously everyone knows these companies, Didi, Uber, Lyft, ride-sharing companies where drivers are able to take riders within the sharing economy. So these companies have had tremendous impact over the past decade. They've changed people's lives all over the world, and they're also, at scale, extremely, extremely profitable. They've been able to build very, very successful businesses with multi-billion-dollar valuations in some cases, especially when you think of Airbnb, you think of Uber, you think of Didi. And so they've done a great job in this first phase of the sharing economy, but we think there are shortcomings, and we think we can do better in tomorrow's decentralized world. So again, today we're going to be talking about Origin Protocol, the sharing economy without intermediaries. Here at Origin, we are trying to define protocols that will enable different sharing economy marketplaces to build on top of our platform so that in the future you will see these different websites and mobile apps all powered by the same shared language that allows for peer-to-peer transactions. So imagine a case in the future where rather than Airbnb, you have decentralized home sharing where the renter is directly interacting with the buyer without this intermediary that is charging fees, that is kind of controlling the system and also has monopolistic power. Before I dive into exactly what we're doing and how we're doing it, let's talk a little bit about why we're doing it. This is really, really important. Not all things in this world should be decentralized, but we strongly believe that decentralized peer-to-peer sharing economy marketplaces fit into this category. They deserve to be disrupted by blockchain technology. Here are the 3 main reasons, and with a couple follow-ups on the next slide. The first reason we want to do this is we want to lower fees that decentralized marketplaces currently charge. Secondly, we also want to reduce censorship. Lastly, we want to redistribute value to early participants in the network. So let me go into a little bit more detail here. You look at these companies, Airbnb, for example, they take fees on both the buyer side and the seller side. You look at Uber, they take a 25% take rate. With additional hidden fees in between. If you do the math, it ends up being 30%, 35% in some cases. This is really, really high. It's onerous, right? And so these companies are matching services, and they do a great job matching buyers and sellers, but do they deserve to take a third, sometimes 40% of the transaction value? We don't think so. Reducing censorship. So if you try to get an Airbnb in San Francisco right now, chances are you're going to have a harder time than you did 2 weeks ago. Reason being, San Francisco local regulatory bodies basically took off over 50% of listings in the past couple weeks based on some new regulations that they want to impose. If you want to take an Uber in London or Vancouver, right now it's banned. So local governments are censoring some of these economies, and it's not just Airbnb, it's not just Uber. You think about North Korea, religion is outlawed, you can't buy a Bible in North Korea. In certain countries, you can't actually have a surrogate for your child. So if you're a mother that's really busy, or you're beyond a certain age, you want to have a surrogate carry your child, that's actually outlawed in certain countries. We believe there are tons of niche and localized use cases where we're able to reduce censorship and allow people to do business the way that they want to. And it's not just local governments either, right? It's the companies themselves. They now have a lot of power being in this monopolistic position. As an example, Airbnb has recently kicked off a number of people on its platform because of political and religious beliefs. So if you're, not that anyone here might be this, but if you're a racist, you're getting kicked off of Airbnb. If you have very strong, very negative views on religion or homosexuality, you might be kicked off Airbnb. And the same is true of Uber and Lyft. You send a bad tweet out that's not politically correct, they have been known to basically ban drivers, ban users. And so we don't actually think that these private corporations that run these services should actually have that political sway. And in this decentralized world, if we are able to build decentralized marketplaces, then basically buyers and sellers are self-regulating. And there's no single point of failure, and there's no single point of control that's so powerful. Thirdly, redistributing value. If you talk to the first 100 Uber drivers, first 100 Airbnb hosts, guess what they're doing? They're probably still doing what they were doing 5 or 6 years ago. And guess what? They're probably making even less money. My co-founder, Josh, was actually in the car with the 30th Uber driver a couple weeks ago. And that driver is not happy. He's getting paid less, the service is worse, and Uber is making a ton of money. He hasn't. So how can we actually redefine this network architecture so that the early participants in the network can actually profit and can actually have financial stake? And it's not just the founders, it's not just the early employees, it's not just the venture capitalists, but everyone contributing to the platform can benefit. Here are a couple of secondary reasons as well. So right now, as a consumer in the United States, I have an Uber account, I have a Lyft account, I have an Airbnb account, I have a Postmates account, I have a DoorDash account, the list goes on. So my user data right now is siloed by all these different companies that basically have proprietary data. This is a bad thing for me as a consumer, right? I would very much prefer to have a single sign-on, have all my identity and reputation carried across all these different businesses. And with the Origin platform, we're able to do this. Talked a little bit about unfair value capture, where basically the very powerful players, the monopolies, are able to capture that value. We want to basically redistribute it. Another bad aspect of these monopolistic companies is when you're a monopoly, you have so much financial power and strength that it stifles innovation. Going back to my first marketplace example, Craigslist, they started in 1995, terrible UI, they didn't accept payments, they didn't basically innovate on any reputation or risk. Guess what? It's 2018, their website looks almost exactly the same, but they've been able to keep their first mover advantage, have a thriving business, and yes, they've been chipped away at in the past 5 years, 10 years by innovators like Letgo or OfferUp or Airbnb, but it's taken 2 decades for this to happen. So when you have these monopolies, it really stifles innovation. And while companies today that we use every single day, again, Didi, Airbnb, Uber, Fiverr, GetAround, are companies that we like, if they have these same monopolies and we're not able to basically encourage them to innovate and compete, what will happen in 5 years, 10 years? This clicker really hits me. All right, so those are all the problems. There's a ton of problems. What are we proposing as a solution for tomorrow's better future? So today I present to you Origin. Origin is a protocol, a platform, and a community. So what do we mean when we say protocol? Well, it's a set of standards. It's a common language for us to basically define what listings look like, how do you manage them, how do you transact against them, how do you define a shared user identity and reputation system, and how do you make this stuff interoperable and collaborative amongst many different developers and businesses. So this is what we mean when we say we're trying to define protocols for the sharing economy. Secondly, we are a platform. So rather than just saying, hey, we're throwing this out there, hopefully everyone uses it, we also want to basically create the right developer tool set and the right developer community so that people are actually using this shared language and they're building meaningful businesses and consumers are getting meaningful benefits. So as part of this, we're building a number of developer tools, including Origin.js, which we'll talk about in a second, as well as encouraging developers to build decentralized applications, dApps, within the sharing economy across many different verticals, across many different regions. And lastly, as I talked to you in the beginning of this discussion, community is extremely, extremely important. If you build something that doesn't have a thriving global community that shares in that vision, then you really don't have anything in the blockchain world. Anyone can build technology in this world. A lot of this code is open source, but unless you have a community supporting you, it doesn't matter, right? I can fork Bitcoin today and launch Maccoin. No one is going to use Maccoin because everyone is using Bitcoin. And so how do we actually think about creating a community of people that believes in the shared vision, that's going to be buying, that's going to be selling, that's going to be developing, that's going to be promoting the open source, open Origin protocol system. Touching quickly on top of our technology stack, and also as an invitation to those of you that are developers, come talk to me after the talk. We are building on 3 open source technologies today: Ethereum, IPFS, and JSON schema. So the way we're thinking about this is 100% open source. This code is going to be extensible, it's going to be forkable. Right now it's open for everyone to see. We have open source contributors in our Slack channel, a couple dozen engineers contributing on just a part-time basis or as a leisurely, hobbyist basis, in addition to our full-time engineers. Our GitHub is open for everyone to see. And this is very, very important for us to convey to you guys in the philosophy of what we're doing. Right? We want to be very, very open. We want to basically have impact that invites the rest of the community to participate and build this future with us together. This is not a traditional company. It's not a traditional project. A little bit more detail. So Ethereum is being used for mission-critical data. It's being used for transaction, business logic, all the stuff that the blockchain is great for, smart contracts that enforce certain business rules. However, Ethereum is also quite inefficient and expensive for storing data as well as for non-essential computations. So for that end, we're using IPFS as our distributed static data storage. So things for listings such as metadata, title, description, images, etc. would be stored in IPFS, but booking logic around rates, booking windows, etc. would be stored on Ethereum. I won't go into too much detail about JSON schema, but it's a clever way that we're able to do client-side data validation and basically define a bunch of different listings that we want within the Origin platform. Our early products are on one side on the developer side, and then on the second side addressing the traditional users, so everyday users that can use a web browser. So Origin.js is going to be very, very fundamental to what we do. As mentioned before, there's a lot of stuff that we need to do on the blockchain, a lot of complex business logic. However, a lot of that's fairly difficult to do. These blockchains are not necessarily easier to use than traditional web technology. And so we're doing a lot of work to basically get the blockchain to do what we want it to do. But we don't want every single developer to have to do that after we've done it the first time. So to that end, we're creating a JavaScript library. We want to make it very, very simple for any developer to hit a couple JavaScript functions, launch a bunch of smart contracts, as well as upload content to IPFS, and basically have your bare bones marketplace ready to go. Second component here is the Origin decentralized application, the dApp. So we as a platform provider are also going to be creating one of the many dApps on the platform that will basically search, index, and browse listings and surface those to our end users. And at this point, I would like to show a quick demo of our alpha version. It's mostly a technology demonstration, but it's pretty cool because it has no traditional backend. There is no Python app, there's no Heroku or AWS hosting this thing, there's no traditional Postgres or MySQL database. This is all blockchain, IPFS, and JavaScript. So a couple of key things I want to point out here. Number one is that what you see is fairly similar to what you would see with a traditional web app. And this is very intentional. If we're going to be successful as a platform, and not just Origin, but all these blockchain projects, if we're going to be successful as a community, we need to make sure that at the end of the day, maybe it's not today, but a year, 2 years, 3 years from now, applications are very easy to use, just like traditional web and mobile applications are today. If there's a bunch of user friction, that's going to be a problem, right? And so what we're showing here is that you can mirror a fairly basic web app on this decentralized technology, very similar to how you would build, let's say, a new version of Craigslist today. There are a couple additional pieces here using MetaMask and your Ethereum wallet to create transactions and upload listings, which is a bit of a user friction. But going forward, there are going to be ways where these user frictions are going to disappear. And then the second point I talked about already is that this is all on the decentralized stack. This is the Ethereum testnet blockchain, the Rinkeby network, as well as IPFS, not a traditional web stack. So we're already proving that it's possible to build applications that look pretty much the same and function pretty much the same as you would today if you were to build this with Ruby on Rails or Node.js or Python. Get back to the slides. Great, so that was our alpha. Again, it's just a technology demonstration at this point, but I encourage you to check it out, demo.originprotocol.com. It can show you what's possible, and with a little bit of creativity and imagination, you can imagine what's coming in the next few months, next couple of years. So we launched that in December of 2017. Right now, we're working on our beta. So with the beta, we're going to have a first version of Origin.js that appeals to developers and allows them to start testing out our platform, as well as all the complex smart contract logic and all the essentially like the backend architecture that we're trying to implement. We're shooting for V1 of platform readiness in Q3 of 2018, and then from there are a number of features around governance. There are features around additional services, whether it's insurance or arbitration, additional features that you'll want in these marketplace type businesses that we're going to be working on in 2019. Currently, our community is growing quite rapidly, and I'd like to encourage everyone here to join that community. So these numbers are actually incorrect. This was a couple days ago, and now we're at almost 14,000 Telegram users. About a week later, hundreds of engineers in Slack. Many of them are starting to contribute, are starting to give us pull requests. Again, even though we are here as the engineers, as the project founders, we see this very much as a global community, and we're really, really looking forward to other members, hopefully some people in this audience today, as well as many other people in the future that will help contribute to the project. This is really not something that we can do alone as just a small engineering team in San Francisco. In order for this to work, we really, really need the support of a bunch of people worldwide. On the partnership front, I just want to touch upon lightly that despite our platform still being in alpha stage, we already have commitments now from 16 partners that build on top of our platform. So a lot of these are early decentralized marketplace plays. We have companies in ride sharing and home sharing, but we also have an advertising marketplace, we have a recruiting marketplace, we have an education marketplace. And so the possibilities really are quite broad. What types of services can do without a middleman that charges fees, that may impose arbitrary regulations? There's a lot of them, and it's not just one player in each space. There are a lot of regional players all over the world. So I think there's a tremendous opportunity where in the future, instead of having one or two global players that act as these monolithic monopolies for each category, you may have dozens or hundreds of localized players within categories. Okay, to close, I would like, again, to invite folks in this audience to join us. If you are someone that is just curious about our vision or just curious about our technology, please visit our website. You can talk to me. Our website is www.originprotocol.com. Please join our Telegram. If you're a developer and you want to check out our code base and make sure that what I'm saying is actually possible, check out our GitHub. It's totally open. Talk to me about any interest you have in contributing to that code base. We'd love to have you participate. If you are a new decentralized marketplace business that is interested in potentially speeding up your time to market, then we would love to talk to you as well. Again, there are 16 partners already signed up with us, and we've only been in existence for about half a year, so we would love to bring that number to 100 partners by the time we're ready for a V1 launch. And this also doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be an existing crypto business. You could also just be an existing sharing economy marketplace. Local bike sharing company, local apartment sharing websites, come talk to me. We'd love to hear from you. Finally, we also know that building this project is not something we can do on our own, and there are certain components where it may be better to use other existing or new protocols. So new protocols around decentralized insurance or arbitration. We just signed a partnership with WeTrust. They're working on a new decentralized insurance protocol. We have the ability to integrate with some of the identity services like Uport and Civic in Keybase. So if there are members in the audience that have interest in these areas to potentially partner with us as a platform, we would also love to talk to you. Please join us in this very ambitious, audacious mission. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be multiple years before we see the full scale of this. But if we are successful, we can change the world together. Thank you.